So it must have been about 11 o'clock. We heard a noise, and I said, hey, I turn around. Hey, I go like this. The guy already knew one of the riflemen. He challenged him, went back and challenged him. Who's there? You know, I could hear him. And the guy says, J.I. So he says, so they asked him the password. Well, that was last night. So the guy got the password. I think it was Golden Night or something. And the guy says, you're wrong. That was last night. The guy said, well, we've been here since last night. And they, okay. So they said, then you hear him come forward. And there was an officer and then an uncom. And they came up in there, and I'm sitting there, and they come and they talk to him. He says, where's the front line? And the guy says, this is the front line. Where's the Germans? Right up there. And the guy says, and don't be walking around and making so much noise. The guys were telling me, because they're over there, see that depression over there, and they got an 88. That's how come all this happened. So they turned around, who's in charge here? You know, and nobody said anything. He says, well, how come everybody's here? How did you guys get together? And they'll say, well, that guy told us to get in here, you know. And he looked at me. I said, look, sir, I have nothing to do with this, you know. I said, I just jumped out here and I thought this was a good spot. I said, and I hollered at them, and I thought that was good to get out of there because they were knocking us down. And then here we are. Then he says, he looks at me, can you hold this for another half hour? I said, I looked at the guys, what do you think, you guys? The guy said, yeah, we could hold it. Yeah. We could try. I said. So he said, okay. He was gone. And then the first thing they asked me when he's gone, you think he'll come back? I said, well, he said, really hope he does. I said, I don't know. And sure enough, within 45 minutes, you know, they tried to be quiet, but to me it sounded like a bunch of cattle at night, you know. They were careful, but, you know, you're nervous and everything. It was a whole company of men that came in, and one of the officers says, which is your line of fire? Well, sir, I said, mine, because the machine gun, I'm firing at this angle, the BR's firing over there. So he went, so he says, I'm going to move that position. You can do whatever you want. And he says, and he told the Donka, get these men back to the rear and take care of them. So he said, come on, you guys. So I just picked up my gun, and that guy picked up the tripod, and here we go, we went back. We went back to headquarters, and the first thing they did is take them to the shower. We stunk, you know. We had to wash, you know. You don't wash in the front line. You stay as long, unless you're able to, and, you know. And that was the first nice bath, warm water we got. It was that type deal, you know, with the big deal. Anyway, you only have 2 minutes to soap and this over there. But that was great. We got new uniforms. They were all clean. Anyway, we was there for about 3 days. And we were all together. We was fed good, you know. We just wandered around. Did nobody bother us. And they kept telling me, what do you think they're going to do? I said, we're going to go back on the line. This is just a little rest for us. I said, they're not going to send us home. You know that. And sure enough, a sergeant came out. I said, I want you guys straighten out and be ready. General's coming out to check on you guys. I want them shoes shined. We didn't have any polish, but we would brush them with the rag, you know. And so we stood out there here, and there comes that guy with a Jeep with, you could see the stars and the plate, you know, and that little flash coming on. I think it was General, what the heck? It was General Craig, Lucius Craig. He was a thin man, tall, gets out with his officers, and we were lined up, trying to look real smart, you know what I mean, shaped up. He takes the paper, start reading the guy's first name, you know, telling what he'd done, he saw the other guys told him. Then he gives that guy a Bronze Star, That's that guy. I'm out at the end all the time. Anyway, when he came out to me, he read out and he says, well, he says, I'm going to give you the Silver Star. I said, sir, I says, I don't think I deserve a Silver Star. I says, I don't deserve any more than my friends here. He said, well, they say you was in charge. Somebody had to be in charge. That's how I got the Silver Star. But I think it should have been either one of them. But he turned around and asked him, yes. He says, if it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't be here. He's the one that told us to be here. So that's the way I feel anyway, you know. I didn't know what the Silver Star was. I didn't know until I went back to my unit, you know. And they made a big deal, especially about the squad, you know. I joined the squad, they made a big deal. Oh, man. He said, oh, now we got a general over here. We got, come on, knock it off, you guys. You know, the guys just did just as much as I did. Then later I became a squad leader. I refused twice. They make a squad leader, but you're not really ranked as a squad leader. I didn't want to do it because a squad leader, you know, when they're firing or anything, or bombing you or something, you can't jump in the hole all the time. You got to check on your men. You know, you got to see, hey, are you okay or this or that? Especially somebody like that, you got to go out there. You know, I want to take care of myself. You know, that's the way I've looked at it. You know, I let the other guy get all the glory. You know, and twice the commander brought out twice I refused. I said, I'm not qualified. I wasn't. And finally at the last, he gave me a good duty. He said, I'll make it up to you. That's what he used to say all the time. Which he did at the end of the war, he did, looking back.